Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session of the Product Schools webinar. Today, we'll be reviewing how to write great product requirements. So as an introduction, my name is Elly Newell. I'm a senior product manager at Amazon. I have about 10 years of experience in the digital space. 9 of those years has been focused on product management. I've worked on internal tools, external tools, API integrations, social and content platforms, as well as attribution solutions. Now I'm currently focused on building out the video offering for the Amazon retail site. But enough about me. Let's get started with why we're all here today. So today we're planning on reviewing what a PRD is, Product Requirements Doc. They're also known as business requirements docs, so you may hear me switch between PRD and BRD. Apologies for that. Then we'll deep dive into how to write requirements, what's included in a requirement, what are best practices. We'll go through an example, and then we'll finish up with what happens after you review a PRD. So starting off, what is a PRD? The PRD itself doesn't touch product opportunity or revenue, but instead it's really rooted in use cases and desired functionality. This is going to be the compass, providing clear guidance on products, purpose, and providing alignment for your team. The PRD should include an overview, or again, the purpose for the release, and the functional requirements, which I'll get into a bit more later. In addition, it should spell out any other ways the system or environments should react. And those are going to be considered non-functional requirements, which I'll get into in a bit as well. All right, why do we need a PRD? The way you should think about it is this is kind of, like I said, the compass or the source of truth for your entire team. If it isn't in the PRD, it won't be included in the release. That's the way you should think about it. Your team will continue to use this document when they need clarifications or questions. And then after the release, it's good to revert back if people have disagreements on exactly what they thought was supposed to be released. So who should be included in reviewing the PRD? Well, you should really include anyone that's working on the project. But you also may want to include other stakeholders that may provide great feedback, such as other PMs, your end users if they're internal, and other developers. This is a great opportunity to really clarify exactly what you're looking to develop, and getting that feedback from other people is going to help iron out areas that you may not have considered. So when will you need to write these? You should consider writing a PRD for any new feature. Without this, there's definitely going to be a risk of confusion, and there's no log of your intent prior to implementation. This comes after you've done your market research and you've built your strategy doc, but before the developers start working on the feature. So you should really consider this an in-between. You've already gotten buy-in from the team that they're interested in doing this. You've got funding for it. Now you're really just getting on paper exactly how you expect it to function. You'll want to start in your PRD by including the objective, why you're proposing the product. I know I just mentioned that this is separate from your strategy doc, and it absolutely is, but I recommend having a short section on top to explain why you're doing this. It'll help bring a lot of good focus on the doc in your meeting. It'll also help remind people who are working on it why it's so valuable. It's always really important to help people understand because it may be top of mind to you, but it's not going to be top of mind to everyone that's working on this. Then you're going to want to move into the requirements, which we'll dive into a little later, so I won't spend too much time on that here. Be sure you include any assumptions about things you expect to be in place, such as assuming that all users should have access via specific role or permission. And then you'll also want to include dependencies or other items the product will rely on, such as services that your team doesn't support. Remember, this is the source of truth. So you also want to include links to the strategy doc where you outlined why you should build this product. And you'll want to include links to the UX mocks so developers can have access to the design in the same place that they have access to the product requirements. Depending on how you manage your workload, you'll likely want to link the BRD in the project plan or in various tickets. It's always good to have it right at the source of where the development is happening. All right, so you've got it written. How do I recommend that you review it with your team? So you're going to want to schedule a review of your document with the entire team. Depending on how long it is, this might be a half-hour review, this might be an hour review. At this stage, there's going to be a lot of questions, clarifications, and challenges coming from the team that should be addressed in the PRD if necessary. So the goal isn't that you show this and everyone loves it and you walk away. You're definitely going to want to get some constructive feedback from your team to make sure you've considered all of the risks and implications. The goal at the end of this is that the PRD is thorough and comprehensive enough that there are no surprises later on. Here's how I recommend handling it. Provide each team member access to the document. Start the meeting by asking them to review it. Give them an allotted amount of time to review it. Leave a section after every section of requirements for notes and open questions. When everyone's done reviewing it, you should ask for high-level feedback overall on the doc. These shouldn't be intricate questions about the requirements, but instead should be any risks or issues people see overall with your product. Once you've gone through that, start going through the questions that you have inline, question by question, address them verbally, but then be sure to include the changes in the PRD as well. Once all of that feedback has been incorporated, you can pass the document over to development. If there are findings after development, say your developers start working in the code and they realize one of the assumptions that you made is incorrect, you can make an update to the doc, but this should be rare, few and far between. And when you do make those changes, you should make sure that you have an updated date next to it so that people know that there was a change, especially after it's been reviewed by the entire team. This will help minimize confusion later. All right, so for most of the rest of this presentation, we'll focus specifically on requirements and features. Starting with how to write a requirement, what's included in a requirement. So you're gonna wanna start with the who, and writing requirements is always a little awkward at first, but it always starts with who your end user is. So this will be who will be using the product. It's recommended to be as specific as possible, especially if there's different users that will be using your product within an org or within a role. Then you move on to the how and the what. So how does the product react when a user is interacting with it? And finally, the when. In what situations does a product require or react this way? So like I said, when starting out, it's going to be a little awkward. So think of it as if a user does X in Y situation, then Z happens. For example, as a shopper, I will get a confirmation alert after I complete a purchase. So that's a good example of having an external user who is going to interact with your feature in some way, and something will happen. Internal example, as an account manager, I can override a bid price when an account is underpacing. In this situation, there's a specific time in which an account manager is able to take an action based on what is happening in your application. All right, so what kind of requirements are you going to include in your doc? First and foremost, you should assume that anything that is not included in the doc will not be included in the release. The primary requirements you're going to be writing are functional and non-functional requirements. So I'll get into those in the next couple slides. But you're also going to want to include metrics as well. So we'll go through each of these individually now. So functional requirements are your product features. These are how someone will use the product and how they can expect for it to respond. So as an example, as an Instagram user, I will get an error message after an unsuccessful photo upload attempt. So here I'm saying, I'm the user, I'm in the app, I've tried to upload the photo, and I'm going to get a response message back if it was unsuccessful. But there's going to be some non-functional requirements driving that, right? It doesn't, we get an error message, great, but how quickly do we time out? In what situations do we time out, et cetera? So these are the non-functional requirements. While functional requirements define what a system does or must not do, non-functional requirements specify how the system should do it. For example, a photo post will time out 30 seconds after unsuccessfully uploading. That's not something a user is going to think about. You may think about it if you're involved in the space, but it's not something that naturally is user facing. But it is a very important component because you need to know how long that is going to sit and lag before we're able to say we're going to call it a timeout there. Outside of these, you're going to want your KPIs as well as any legal required data. So you want these metrics because you want to be able to track success, performance, usage, etc. So here you can say, as a PM, you're now the end user here. As a PM, I can count all of my users who uploaded an image to my team's dashboard. You also, going with our last example, might want to say, as a PM, I can see a count of all timeouts for video uploads. So you're able to see how often that failed. All right, now we are going to jump into an example. So you're a PM at Instagram, circa 2011. We'll stick with the Instagram example. And you're looking at implementing Instagram-like functionality. You're going to need to write requirements for this. What do you want to consider? So I'm going to give you a minute right now just to quickly jot down everything you think would be important in implementing like functionality. After that, I'm going to go through some considerations that I was thinking of if I was the product manager for this, and then we'll break down those considerations into specific product requirements. So I'll give you a minute starting now. All right, so I gave you more like a minute and a half. So hopefully you were able to come up with some good examples. Here's some considerations that I had when thinking about what I would want to include. And these are probably a lot of the things you considered as well. So first being, what types of content does this apply to? So now there's a lot of different content on Instagram. Can you like everything? Can you only like posts? So that would be something that you would want to consider. In what situations can or can't someone like a post? Are there specific people that you can only like posts for? We'll get into these more in a bit. What steps does someone take to like an image? So how does someone actually interact with the functionality that you're building out? Can someone remove a like? Is there an undo button? And how does that work? What, if any, feedback does the person liking the image get? And what, if any, feedback does the person receiving the like get? So again, these are going to seem probably really basic if you've interacted with this functionality before, but someone had to kind of write the blueprint for it, and that's what we're looking to do here. And then finally, KPIs and error handling. These are just some of the things that were probably included in the PRD for that product. We're definitely not going through an exhaustive list here, but this is a starting point for us to consider what it would be like to build out that feature. All right, so now we're going to break down a couple of these. So I'll start with the first couple, which is what content types do likes apply to, and in what situations can or can't someone like an image. So the first one, as an Instagram user, I can like images posted by private accounts I follow. So this is saying right away that there is a restriction on which ones I'm going to be able to like. As an Instagram user, I can like images posted by public accounts. So this sounds like, all right, I can like images of accounts that I have access to. There are going to be private accounts that I don't follow that I won't be able to like. So this is a way of showing the proactive way of how someone can interact with this content, but it doesn't assume sunny day situation where your developer would know that this person isn't able to go and access other images to like that they aren't following. All right, next one. What steps does someone take to like an image? And how can someone remove a like? So as an Instagram user, I can like an image by double tapping the image. So for those that are familiar with this feature, you know that that's one way to do it. But there's also another way to do it. I can like an image by clicking the heart icon below the image. So both of those are ways for your end users to interact with your feature and to get a result back. Next is how do you undo it, the undo option. So as an Instagram user, I can unlike an image that I previously liked by double clicking the image. I can also do it by clicking the heart icon. So I always struggle with this. Sometimes I think, gosh, this feels so redundant. I feel like I keep writing the same thing over and over again, and it's so long. I have to start with as a user, and it's the same reaction. But I find that it's best to have these broken out. When you start using ands or any other conjunctions in the statement, it gets a little convoluted, and you're going to have less of a chance of it being implemented the way that you expected. So where possible, don't add conjunctions. Come up with a new requirement for that. All right. So then we go on to what, if any, feedback does the person liking the image get, and what feedback does the person receiving the like get? So from an immediate thought process, my head goes to, as an Instagram user, I will receive a push notification when someone likes my image. As that user, I can opt out of those push notifications as well. You want to make sure that you know the situations in which they are able to say they don't want to see this feedback. And then as an Instagram user, I will get an in-app notification when someone likes my image. Seems easy. We've covered the cases. It can come outside the app to your phone. It can come in the app to your phone. But this leads to a bigger question, which is that very simple statement of, as an Instagram user, I can get an in-app notification when someone likes my image. That blows up into a whole feature in itself, and that is the like tab. So you need to consider not just what's going to happen, but how the user is going to see that happen. And that comes into play a lot with your work with design and making sure that there are clear concepts for how a user is going to get the feedback or interact appropriately with your feature. So this extends to now, as an Instagram user, I will see a list ordered by most recent likes. Having a list isn't enough. You have to state exactly how the list is going to look and how it's going to be organized. As an Instagram user, I will only have access to this information for the last 20 likes. So this is likely, if you didn't have this one here, when you went to the PRD review, one of your developers would likely say, well, what's the cutoff? Because we can't continue to load this. It's going to cause issues with loading that screen. There may be issues with just the user interaction from a design perspective. So this is a good one in realizing that not everything is about why your product is so great. You also have to have the limitations of your product as well. And then finally, as an Instagram user, if I click on one of these rows, it'll take me to the image that was last liked. So that's a little more interaction with that like carousel and how it can take you to different places within the app. All right. So before jumping into KPIs, I'm just gonna talk about how to organize these while they're top of mind. So in order for your requirements to make sense for your team, you're going to want them to be organized by the features that you're working on. So I recommend by starting with feature, but then also organizing by priority. One moment, apologies. All right. So here you can see that for the like screen, I have the must-have features, and those are labeled by priority 0. And I have some nice-to-haves as priority 1. So when I was thinking through this feature as a product manager, I was thinking there are some obvious things we need. We need a screen. It needs to have some of the likes. They need to be ordered in a specific way so it's not confusing to the user. But things like if I click on a row, it takes me back to the image, or starting to consolidate different likes based on the image. Those seem like things that would be great to have, but I can launch the feature without it, and I still think it would be of value to the shopper. So sorry, not to the shopper, to the Instagram user. So consider that when you're putting these priorities in place. For you, they might all seem great. You want to have just the best experience ever out there, but also consider the amount of dev work that it's going to take. So you should likely prioritize on those that are absolutely needed to get out, and then have P1s as things that you'll iterate on quickly afterwards. Oh, and one thing to add, I do like including a row or a column that says which require UX. So that helps, one, the UX designer realize what work they need to put in, and then it also reminds the developers that if there's an X next to that, they should be looking at a design for that feature or for that requirement. Okay, and we can't stop talking about the PRD without talking about the KPIs. So you'll want to include the metrics here. Here are some metrics I think would be important, but just as the functional requirements, there's a lot of considerations that would also likely be included. So here I have as a PM, I want to track how many users liked an image. As a PM, I want to track the total number of likes on a platform. As a PM, I can track how many people unliked mine, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all really valuable for me to prove out success here. I'd likely also have some performance monitoring as well. But again, this is just a taste of some of the features that I think would be included, some of the requirements that should be talked about. I'm sure your list might have different ones as well. Definitely did not cover everything here, but hopefully this gave you a good example of how to put requirements into practice. All right, so you wrote your PRD, now what? Well, your PRD should be considered locked once development starts. Changes should be few and well documented. The team will use the PRD to create stories and to create a project plan, while QA will use it to build their QA plan. You'll likely use it in pre-launch as well to ensure implementation was to spec. I always like when I go through a demo with the team and they're showing it to me, I kind of just have my PRD next to me and kind of check off each feature. And if something wasn't shown, I ask to review it just to make sure it was implemented appropriately. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation and learned a few things. If you can only take away a couple learnings, I recommend the following. So a PRD is the compass for product development. This is your source of truth among the entire team and across everyone working on the project. You should be able to send this off to anyone that has questions in terms of what you're implementing. They should be able to review it and understand exactly what you're looking to put into production. A PRD should be reviewed early and often with your team. The best chance to catch gaps before investing in development time is talking to your team about the PRD and making sure that they're very clear on what your requirements are, and also making sure that you have their feedback and that you've implemented other items that you may not have considered that they considered. Requirements should be written as the end user. Again, I know it's going to feel awkward when you start writing it that way, but it will get more comfortable. The more you have specific end users, the easier it is for your developers, one, to understand exactly what you need, but also the clearer it is in terms of how specific users will interact with your features. And finally, requirements should cover both product features and properties. So the requirements we went through in the example were all around product features. You'd also want to include properties as well, such as what happens if a like doesn't go through, what are different error examples, what are assumptions that should be made in order for this feature to work. So all of those should be included. As you're getting ramped up on this, obviously, I think it's great for you to work with developers to make sure that all of those properties are included as well. All right, so thank you again. I hope you enjoyed this, and good luck getting started writing all of your amazing product requirements docs.